The Middle-earth in J.R.R. Tolkien's work is a rather mysterious place. On the land, roamed upon by elves and men, many other mysterious beings reside with powers that are beyond our comprehension. If they are creatures of the light, it's great, but what about creatures of the dark? In today's video, we'll be uncovering the chilling story of one such creature from Lord of the Rings, known as the Barrow-wights. These ghoulish creatures, with their icy touch, will definitely send a shiver down your spine. So bring your coziest blanket and let's get down to business. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Who are the undead beings in Rings of Power? The second season of the Rings of Power has fans excited, as this will introduce Tom Bombadil on screen. But along with Bombadil, this season also introduced us to Tolkien's representation of the supernatural beings known as the Barrow-wights. In the book, Frodo encountered the Wights, as they called them, when the hobbits were captured in a burial mound. The chapter detailing this encounter is extremely creepy and unsettling. Tolkien never quite gave us many details about what these Barrow-wights looked like, other than them being tall, shadowy figures with a pale light from a remote distance lighting their eyes. These wights speak in incantations, which come off as a song, rather a memory of a song. With their haunting, cold, and deep voices, these beings are terrifying. With their unspecified description, these creatures make the readers use their own imagination to fill in the gaps. Adorned with belongings of the deceased, these ethereal entities are extremely good at casting terrifying visions, dreams, and trances. In the Fellowship of the Rings, the four hobbits, Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin, end up under the spell of one of these wights. Needless to say, they have a ghastly experience. The visions they saw and the perceptions they had made it clear they were reliving the life of the deceased king who lay there. Now, in the books, Frodo managed to cut off one of their hands, but when it comes to our protagonist in the show, the confrontation went a lot differently. In episode 4 of the series, we follow Galadriel and Elrond with their party, traveling to Celebrimbor. They come across a bridge that's completely shattered, making it difficult for them to travel any further without adding more days to their journey. Camnir suggests to Elrond that they can either go north, which would add 2 weeks to their journey, or they could go through the hills of Tirn Gorthad. That way, they would reach Eregion much faster. However, as they discuss this, Galadriel hears voices in the wind. She gets a vision of a dark burial mound with a decrepit hand reaching out to grab for something. She tells Elrond that the hills are filled with malicious spirits. She guesses that Sauron means for them to go that way and insists they go another direction. However, Elrond refuses. He knows that the enemy is watching both ways, and as the bridge is gone, it only means that they're reaching Celebrimbor as soon as they can, which is important. So he decides to go south, despite Galadriel's protests. However, things definitely take a turn for the worse when night falls on Galadriel and her company. As they walk through the forest covering the hills, they hear faint whispers in the night, telling them that the speaker is waiting for them. Daemor notices the structures on the ground and asks where they are. This is where we learn that they've reached Tirn Gorthad, the place where people laid their lords and kings to rest. Unbeknownst to them, they were being watched by something sinister that lurked in the darkness. Thorondil tried to comfort everyone by saying dead men are no threat, but oh boy, was he wrong. As they moved through the burial ground, the voices on the wind whispered louder. Vorondil noticed 2 glowing eyes in one of the openings on the mound, and as he tried to explain what he heard, things turned worse. Elrond noticed clothes on the ground, which he quickly realized were from Lindon. Galadriel confirmed his fears. The clothes that lay in front of them belonged to the dispatch sent before them. Right then, chains came out of the darkness and wrapped around Daemor, dragging him into one of the mounds. Even before anyone could react, he was already halfway there. Galadriel managed to grab his hand, but that wasn't enough. Daemor was lost. Gross sounds of breaking bones and muscles squelching were heard from the dark opening of the mound, and the whispers in the air grew louder. Shadowy figures appeared around them, and slowly out of the pile of leaves that lay before them came out Barrow-wights. These skeletons, dressed in royal garb, with their icy blue eyes, closed in on the group of elves. The elves attacked, but it was evident that their attempts didn't avail anything. Whatever bones they break, whatever limbs they destroy, the wights managed to regrow them. Thinking quickly, Elrond and Camnir opened one of these mounds, and right before Galadriel was pulled into one such mound herself, Elrond saved her with a swift move of his blade. The creatures can only go to rest if the blades they were buried with are used against them. Galadriel and Elrond both realized that something evil must have awakened these creatures, and that things were getting dire fast. With such a memorable and frankly scary introduction to the Barrow-wights, I'm sure you're curious about how they came to be, right? Well, fear not, for I'll tell you all about their origins. Backstory of the Barrow-wights. During the First Age, some of the earliest men lived in Eriador before crossing the Blue Mountains and settling into Beleriand. These men were the Edain, the men who joined the elves in the Wars of Beleriand. Now, before their migration, these men built several burial mounds in the area. In the Second Age, when Sauron was at his peak, and many men swayed under his influence, the Dunlandings, the vicious men who lived in Dunland, traveled far north until the Barrow Downs were built in the First Age. After the fall of Numenor, Elendil established his kingdom of Arnor, and the Barrow Downs were a part of it. People revered the Barrow Downs as they were built by their own ancestors. These Arnorians were the ones who started the tradition of burying their lords and kings on these burial grounds, as we see Elrond mention in the episode. After the death of King Earendur in the year 861 of the Third Age, Arnor was divided into 3 different kingdoms, each ruled by one of his sons. They were Arthedain, Redur, and Cardolan. These Barrow Downs fall in the kingdom of Cardolan. 600 years later, these kingdoms were at war with the Witch King Angmar for 50 years. In the year 1409, a large army of the Witch King came and defeated the King of Cardolan. When the army of the Witch King ravaged the land, some of the Dunedain defended these Barrow Downs. They eventually fled into the Old Forest. The forces of the Witch King were eventually defeated by the elves, but the peace didn't last long. In the year 1636, Cardolan was ravaged by the plague sent forth by Sauron. Most of Cardolan's population died due to the Great Plague. With Cardolan's numbers dwindling, they were unable to save themselves against the evil spirits that Sauron sent forth after the plague. These evil spirits settled in the Barrow Downs and inhabited them to ensure Cardolan never rose to power again. Now, we do not know if these spirits are corrupted Maiar or spirits of orcs and evil men or fallen elves. These spirits are what we know as the Barrow-wights. They use the bones of the dead men who were buried in the barrows, making a mockery of the ones who were laid to rest. With rattling gold rings on their fingers and pale light in place of their eyes, these Barrow-wights were a terrifying ally of the forces of darkness. In the following years, the Witch King personally showed up at the Barrow Downs to awaken these Barrow-wights and strengthen them. As Frodo and company fled to Rivendell, he killed the Dunedain Rangers that lived near the entrap of the Ring-bearers. This plan almost worked out when the 4 hobbits came down to the Barrow Downs and got captured. This is where we learn that the Barrow-wights would capture their victims and put them in a trance. They were laid on a stone slab and covered in gold and jewels with white robes. There was a sword that lay across the throats of the hobbits. Frodo was the last one to succumb to the spell, so he was aware of the things that were happening. Just when the white managed to finish its incantation and was about to kill the hobbits, Frodo gathered his courage and sliced off its hand. He called upon Tom Bombadil, who performed a song in the barrow, leading to the white fleeing from the place. The only way the white cannot make a barrow its home is if the gold and treasures from the barrow were laid out on the grass, and that's what Bombadil did after defeating this white. Are they more powerful than Ringwraiths? The Ringwraiths, commonly known as the Nazgul, are the ring servants of Dark Lord Sauron. Corrupted by Sauron, they were once kings of men, bearing the 9 rings, now dreaded by everyone in Middle-earth. So with the mysterious Barrow-wights existing, you might wonder who's stronger. Well, the Witch King in particular, as I mentioned, had a relationship with the Barrow-wights, as he went forth to wake the wights and other creatures there. But it's clear that the Barrow-wights are simply not as strong as the Ringwraiths are. The Nazguls got their power from the will of Sauron. All of them had long swords and daggers and powerful voices that terrified anyone who heard their sound. They had a general aura of dread, which made them extremely feared. While they could not see anything in the daylight, at night the Nazgul could see all the creatures that even mortal men could not see. They affected all creatures with their influence of terror, known as the Black Breath. The fear, the dread that the 9 created, was a great source of their power. Aragorn managed to fend off 5 of the Ringwraiths in the Fellowship of the Ring, but do not let that fool you into thinking that they go down that easily. While it's true that the Wights are not in the same league as the Nazgul, it surely doesn't take anything away from how dangerous they are. Among the children of Iluvatar, men have the gift of death bestowed upon them by the Creator. To cheat death, the physical form of the 9 great kings of men were corrupted by the will of the One Ring, fortifying Sauron's moniker of the Necromancer. Likewise, the spirits of the dead that he commanded were also corruptions of the gift of death. So in theory, the Wights may not be so different from the Ringwraiths after all. Marvelous verdict. Regardless of how divisive the Rings of Power has been among fans, the Wights are a great choice for on-screen portrayal, as it embodies the many facets of Tolkien's world that have captivated so many generations of readers. The fact that in the Chasm of Moria, Gandalf had said that there dwell creatures older and fouler than Sauron, added a layer of further mystery for me personally. In an already vast and ancient world, the Barrow-wights are just one more instance of the many mysteries that have always lurked on the margins of the story, and that's how I look at it. Let us know in the comments if you too think that the Barrow-wights were a cool aspect of the books that the series has incorporated. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.